Welcome to Introduction to Project Management, Project Monitoring and Control. This is Lecture A. The objectives for project monitoring and control are to direct project execution, track, review, and report project progress and performance, monitor and control project baselines, manage stakeholder expectations and change requests. First, let's take a look at where monitoring and control fit into the spectrum of project management. As a quick review of 5 project management processes, initiation processes define a new project or new phase of an existing project. The planning processes then lay out the project scope and strategies to achieve its objectives. Executing processes step in to accomplish the work of the project and satisfy the project objectives. Once those objectives are reached, the closing processes finalize all activities and formally close the project. Note that these 4 processes, illustrated by the diagonal arrows running from left to right, work more or less sequentially. But monitoring and controlling processes operate across this whole spectrum, which you can see by the horizontal arrows running back and forth along the first 4 processes. The monitoring and controlling phase tracks, reviews, controls the progress and performance of the project, as well as identifies all the changes to the project plans from initiation to closing. So when we say monitor and control, we are really referring to a set of ongoing activities that span the entire project. This slide relates the monitoring and controlling processes to the different knowledge areas associated with the project management body of knowledge. During the execution of the project, you will direct monitoring and controlling activities in all of these knowledge areas: schedule, communication, risk, and so on. You and your team will monitor the project progress and performance to confirm that the project will complete on time, within budget and specifications, and to quality standards. You will ensure that communications are clearly conveyed between stakeholders and implementation personnel, that risk is being managed, and that procurements are being handled. The monitoring and controlling activities touch every aspect of a project. Let's break that concept down a little more in the next slide. As a project manager, you ensure that the project plan includes performance objectives so that you can track, review, and regulate the progress of the project. You coordinate approved project changes across all phases. For example, a change in project scope may necessitate a change in the project schedule or budget. You will also generate reports to communicate project performance information regarding the scope, cost, resource, quality, risk, and schedule to all stakeholders and team personnel. The monitoring and controlling phase requires you to take a global view of the entire project so you can make sure that all the elements are cooperating with each other. This project management triangle, also known as the triple constraint, illustrates how the relationship between the 3 project constraints of scope, schedule, and budget work to ensure the success of a project. As you can see here, one side of the triangle cannot be altered without affecting the others. So if there is a change to one of the project constraints, such as the project schedule, you must evaluate potential impacts to the other project constraints. Fortunately, there are a number of tools available to help you control changes to these elements. Establishing baselines will help you manage those project constraints. Baselines are documented values that can be used as reference points for future comparisons. You will use your WBS to organize your baselines. In terms of scope, your baseline will include the tasks and activities in each element of the WBS. For the time baseline, you will determine not only the start and end dates for your entire project, but for the individual work packages. You will establish the deadlines for deliverables and key events. The cost baseline will consist of the estimated expenditures for your entire project, as well as for each work package. Depending on the complexity of the project, you may need to break down expenditures for each activity within the work package. Setting these baselines will establish a fixed point for comparison and monitoring purposes should your project get altered, and it will. Earned Value Management, or EVM, is a method for managing baselines. For each work package, EVM will use the assigned values, as well as actual number outcomes, for project constraint to calculate variances from plan to outcome. For each work package, EVM compares the assigned values for cost against the actual expenditures in the context of how much work was completed between the start and end dates. The variances can tell you if your project is on track. Some of the needed values for EVM are easy to obtain. You will have task start and end dates from your project management plan. You will know estimated and actual costs. The difficult value to establish is the estimate of work completed. You'll have to establish a certain percentage and be conservative. People do tend to overestimate how much of a project is completed, and that assumption can have repercussions down the line. You would rather be early completing a project than realize too late that your project was running behind. In terms of progress reporting, you can monitor progress simply by meeting with your team to discuss performance and their experiences on the project. At these meetings, ask team members to report on the status of all current and upcoming tasks. Review the risk management plan with them and discuss your risk response activities. Compare actual performance against planned performance and schedule. What are the planned deadlines versus actual completion times of tasks and deliverables? Regarding costs, what are the budgeted costs versus actual costs? Comparing these elements helps you assess progress. Face-to-face meetings may not always be feasible or practical. Perhaps team members can routinely post performance information to an IT device, such as a server or a network, and review information at their convenience. Or you may consider conducting meetings online. Many project managers use diagrams to visualize and understand the progress on tasks and work packages. The Gantt chart, shown on this slide, is the most widely used diagram to chart progress, most often against a schedule. Notice that the chart is presenting a timeline. It shows the months of June, July, and August along the top horizontal bar, while it lists the tasks and work packages along the left vertical bar. As you can see here, the work packages have been broken down into smaller units. The dark lines show the estimated duration for each of the work packages, and the light bars show the actual duration of work completed. Let's say that we are looking at this chart on June 23rd to assess the status of the work, and the visual helps us see immediately that on that date, work package 1.1 has not been completed. The schedule shows that your team should be about a third of the way through work package 1.2, but according to the chart, it hasn't even started yet. What about deliverable 1? Is that going to be delayed? The Gantt chart shows us that deliverable 1 depends on the completion of work package 1.2. Since the work on package 1.2 hasn't even begun, we can assume that the planned deliverable date for work package 1 is in jeopardy. Notice how the visualization can give you a summary review of the status of the project, work packages, and deliverables. It makes it easier to assess status and spot critical issues that require your attention. Tracking progress of work packages and their deliverables is essential to the success of your project. One late task can cause delays that will ripple throughout the entire schedule and put the promised delivery of products at risk. You must always be alert for scope creep. Projects often fail because scope was not adequately managed. It's called scope creep for a reason. It sneaks up on you. Once your clinical stakeholders become invested in the project, they will come up with an astounding number of improvements. But remember that small request does not necessarily mean small impact. It is up to you as the project manager to analyze each idea for its impact on the system and project scope and rein in those that veer outside of the boundaries. Know that you can be a team player, dedicated to the success of the project, and also keep a firm hand on your scope boundaries. Educate customers as needed about the direct impacts of scope creep on schedule, budget, and deliverables, and consider changes only through a well-defined and managed process. This process prioritizes necessary changes and presents their ramifications to upper management with your recommendations for approval. You are responsible for updating all parties about the approved changes and their impact on the project. The best way to control scope creep is to educate your team and engage them as lookouts for it. If they are not alert, they can easily acquiesce to some small request or leave an assumption unchallenged that can have ramifications down the line of your project. For example, a customer may casually mention that the system will update the database in real time so that it is always current. If this assumption is not true, you or your team members must speak up. If such comments remain unchallenged, they can become de facto requirements, and before you know it, you have gone beyond the scope of the project. Another way to manage scope is by tracking requirements satisfaction. Here, software tools can be very helpful. Often they are called computer-assisted system engineering tools, perhaps better known as CASE tools, and they help manage scope by tracking changes in requirements. For example, what was the origin of X requirement? What stakeholder wanted it? What business need does this requirement support? When was it made a requirement, as part of the original project charter or a later addition? Looking forward, what part of the design or what part of the system implements this requirement? What version of this system will implement this requirement? What release or drop of the system will implement this requirement? What about test validation? Who will test this requirement to make sure that the system satisfies it? CASE tools can help you show customers how requirements have been met during the project and in the final system. This concludes Lecture 9A of Project Monitoring and Control. In summary, we have reviewed the ways that project monitoring and controlling interacts with each phase of the project, discussed the project manager's responsibilities in controlling scope, schedule, and budget, as well as tools for doing so, and emphasized the importance of managing stakeholder expectations and change requests.